My videos about educational reform collect many disturbing conspiracy comments worthy of addressing. Those comments rave about how the U.S. Department of Education has intentionally structured the school system to be ineffective. It's all some conspiracy to keep the general population uneducated so the 1% can keep the populace just smart enough to work and just stupid enough to not ask questions. It may be the case that most of the U.S. population is intelligent enough to contribute to the workforce while being apathetic enough to remain on the political sidelines. I also agree that our education system needs a great deal of reform if it's ever to reach its potential. However, those facts don't correlate for us to reasonably conclude that the education system is intentionally designed to fail. From what I can tell, my local movie theater makes very little annual revenue. It has small theaters, poor sound, old screens, and a rustic building. Most people here are happy to drive an hour or more to a bigger city to see a movie in a quality theater. That doesn't mean the theater's manager has intentionally designed it to fail. Its lack of success is more likely due to a combination of factors both within and outside of the manager's control. When you consider the success rate of our country's education, especially as compared to that of other countries, it's crucial to understand how that ranking occurs. As I've said before, education is treated like a business, but it doesn't produce objective products and profits in the way that a business does. We end up finding the most objective means possible to turn students into numbers to evaluate success rates and compare them to other students in other places. That method is test scores. Test scores which, at least in America, are designed to achieve on a bell curve. Do you know what would happen to a state if it had, say, 90+% of its students score 90+% on their exams? They'd make the exam more difficult for the next year so that not as many students would be successful, and they'd claim that if that many students were being successful, then the curriculum wasn't rigorous enough. The root of the problem with America's education system isn't that it's run by the government, though the government should certainly consult more educators and fewer politicians and could do better. But the problem is that our education system is out of date. The system was originally designed to make the entire country literate and competent in basic math. Mission pretty much accomplished there, as about 99% of our population is literate. Our nation's current education system is suffering from an identity crisis because we haven't reached a commonly understood goal for what we want our schools to accomplish today. We know that we want it to do something beyond instructing basic reading, writing, and arithmetic, but nobody can quite agree on what that is. We also want a one-size-fits-all student system both on the state and national level, and that forces everybody to the middle rather than inspiring ubiquitous individual growth. Our vocationally oriented students are bored to tears because they know they're wasting their time in learning about Shakespeare, and the college-bound students are frustrated because they often have to sit in a class with 27 kids who have no interest in higher education, sapping the instructor's time, effort, and energy away from actually learning. Because America wants to have one education system for all of its students, schools are forced to develop the broad, meaningless mission statements that I've mentioned before. Without a clear goal or narrow set of goals, you can't formulate a clear plan for achievement. What the states do know is that the federal government is going to fund them based on their success, as we see in such absurd cases as Race to the Top. And they know that the primary factor in their evaluation is going to be test scores. Therefore, tests are administered to assess how well each state has given instruction on its vague curriculum. Because the mission of that curriculum is so undefined and chalked with educational buzzwords rather than actual substance, the educators don't have an overall goal, just curriculum points to teach that offer no reason to be taught other than the fact that the state's going to include them on the test. So, if you have entire states of teachers told to teach to the test, rather than to strive for a meaningful common goal, because the businessmen who run the whole process only understand success if quantified by numbers, and most of those teachers are doing so with an obsolete underfunded infrastructure that was designed in the 1700s. It's worth mentioning at this point that the reason private schools are so widely considered to be so successful in comparison to their public school counterparts is not because the government runs the public education system. It's largely because schools that are public have the responsibility to educate every student that walks through their doors. They don't have the luxury of screening students to consider their background, disabilities, or test-taking abilities, and only keeping those they feel they have the resources to best serve and get the best results from. If a private school wishes to do so, it's free to give an entry examination to take into consider before enrolling new students. And what system will be used to determine if the school has done well? That's right, test scores. So you see, folks, the struggles of public education are not due to a bunch of politicians wringing their hands and smiling menacingly in a dark circle in some DC penthouse, laughing down at the intentionally poorly educated insects scampering about to their minimum wage jobs in the city streets below. It's a clusterfuck of confusion from people in all parties doing the best they can do with the knowledge and resources at their disposal, mostly shackled by the fiscal, legal, and capital limitations. And if we as a country ever decide to make education for all of our youth a priority, we can fix it. I'll just be right over here, waiting. Whenever you're ready, just let me know.